Okay. All right, good day. It is June 11th, 2021, and we have kind of just gotten through our first blast of heat and humidity to the extent that the hair on my head actually was retaining moisture. So if you can believe that, that is definitely humid. Online today for the June 11th Turfgrass Team Times, Dr. David Gardner, Todd Hicks, and Pamela Sherratt with her own family-defined Karen haircut. We will lead it away with Todd and a disease update.
Thanks, Ed. So far, things have, as Ed has said, have really blown up the last 7 to 10 days. Parts of Ohio were dealing with red thread early in the spring. Other places were drier, but with the weather we've had, everybody is dealing with red thread. Remember, it's a gateway disease. It weakens the turf, looks crappy, and usually will be followed by either leaf spot and or dollar spot. So if you haven't taken care of it by now, about the only thing you can do is probably use a chemical to try to clean it up if that's available to you. Speaking of leaf spot, it's ubiquitous. It is everywhere out there. It's on home lawns, chewing away, athletic fields, and on golf courses. I've got samples from bent grass. Watch out, golf course fix, because early parts of leaf spot, very hard to diagnose sometimes. It looks like dollar spot. It can look like copper spot. It can look like microdochium. It's very hard to distinguish what it is sometimes, especially early in the season. Make sure you know what you're spraying on what. So don't waste chemistries. If you have questions, send us a sample or seek advice or help before you spray. Leaf spot's another one that, well, once you get leaf spot, it's going to be there all summer long. It is a non-discriminatory disease. It likes hot weather and it likes cold weather. It just needs water. So welcome to Ohio. We have water and we have both those weather types. You got it. It's going to stay. Take care of it now and sleep better the summer long. My favorite disease has exploded this week, dollar spot. I didn't have disease at the turf center till about 5 days ago, and it didn't come in with a whisper. It was more like a bomb blowing up. Disease pressure is extremely high right now with dollar spot. If you're ahead of the game, good for you. Stay ahead of the game by shortening your windows. If you have a 21-day or a 14-day product, shorten the window down because it's not going to make it, not in this weather pattern with this amount of disease. If you're behind the game, make sure you're using the correct nozzles, you're spraying the right amounts, and you're using full strength products to try to knock this back and get ahead of the game. The other one that we're seeing out there, and it's all over the state, if you've had it before, Pythium, you're probably having it now or will get it with this weather pattern. We've had the daytime temps and humidity, but the key to Pythium is the nighttime temps and the nighttime humidity. So if you got areas that hold water or water floods across and stuff, my email and my Twitter and everything e-social has been filled with pictures, beautiful pictures of Pythium. So again, with Pythium, make sure you're spraying the right product for what you have. There are good preventatives, there are good curatives, and there's at least one that does both of those things. Some of them don't do both. Make sure you know what you're spraying on what. And finally, again, if you need help, reach out, send us a sample, give me a call, send me a text, and we'll see what we can do for you. That's all I've got for this weekend. I've got to run. Everybody have a great weekend.
Thanks, Todd. Much appreciated. All right. Following on from Todd, we got Pamela Sherratt screaming at us in her Karen haircut.
Yeah, you got to love my kids. Every time I do something like this, they make you humble, right? So I'm going to go ahead and share my screen. I have a couple of things to share this week. And the first is, so this is a lawn that my son actually mows for a neighbor. And you can see that it looks scalped in several areas. And the reason it looks scalped in several areas is that there's a lot of low spots. And so top dressing is not something that we talk about a lot on lawns, but I think it's something that we should, not just for golf courses and sports fields, but if you have a lawn that has undulations, low spots, and you want to stop this sort of scalping and you want consistency in your lawn and you don't want, you know, somebody, your mailman falling in and twisting their ankle, we can top dress lawns too. And so, you know, we're not talking about the high quality screened sand materials that we'd use on athletic fields, but we're using, you can use something like topsoil. So you reach out to your local topsoil supplier and you get a good quality topsoil, and you can top dress these areas by hand, or you can talk to your lawn care professional to see if they could help you apply top dressing to your lawn. And the top dressing is going to do several things. And not only is it going to get rid of those undulations over time, but you can also use it if you're seeding to help retain moisture. So you would, if you have bare areas on your lawn, you can put seed down and then you would top dress it with, you know, a 1/4 inch of good quality topsoil, and it would help retain moisture and help those seedlings establish quicker. So it's certainly something I've done in my lawn in the past. I used a 1/4 inch of Comtil Plus, which is a biosolid material from the city of Columbus. It's a human solid, human feces compost material mixed with wood chip. And actually, I didn't have to fertilize my lawn for about 18 months because of the nitrogen release from that organic product. So, so you can use a good quality compost, you can use a good quality topsoil. And then, of course, in the professional world, in golf courses and sports fields, you'd be using, if you're trying to improve the soil physical properties over time, you're going to be using a sand product. If you're considering going on a top dressing program to improve the soil quality of your fields, please do reach out to us. We can help you source a good sand in Ohio. We can help you find a laboratory that can test that sand to make sure that it fits the right criteria. And it's something that once you start, you have to continue with. It's not something that you can do and then 1 year and then let it go. It's something that becomes a regular part of your program. So I just wanted to mention top dressing, and then also, as Todd was saying, you know, the moisture and the combination of the warmth and the moisture has led to disease, but it's also led to excessive mowing. And so I implore all of you that are managing multi-sport facilities, large areas of turf grass, if you're having trouble with manpower and just time keeping up with the mowing, please do look at plant growth regulators. Plant growth regulators will cut your mowing down by about half, improve the quality of those turf grass areas, and not just the mowing, but the edging, painting lines on soccer, on sports fields. All of those types of jobs can be significantly, the manpower that goes into them can be significantly decreased if you're using a plant growth regulator. So again, if you're not sure which one to use and what to do, reach out to us. And we can help walk you through that. There's plenty of information online. If you were to Google it, there's lots of articles out there about plant growth regulators. I had a sports field manager actually tell me in a conference this year that he always heard me going on about plant growth regulators and never believed me. And then he tried it and he's never looked back because it's cut down on his manpower and his equipment use and everything else. So budget, manpower, everything, there's really no detriment to starting a plant growth regulator program if you are struggling with those things that I mentioned. So that's it, Ed, for me this week. And I will stay on because I like to learn from you guys too.
Thanks, Pam. Dave Gardner.
All right. Good morning, everybody. Let me go ahead and share my screen, talk about some things that I see going on. All right. So got a lot going on in this picture, some red thread. So Todd talked a little bit about red thread. But then there's also, you see some winter annual weeds, mainly mouse-eared chickweed. Seems to be kind of dominant right now, some of the Veronica species. But you also see that I have some annual weeds that I've fairly effectively controlled too. First on that red thread, just a close-up picture. I like to show these every now and again. It's such a pretty disease, even though it causes a problem with the turf. A lot of times you see red thread on ryegrass, right? It's a little bit more prone to that, but both of those diseases, dollar spot and red thread, one of the things that we tell people is that that's kind of your indicator that you could throw an additional ½ pound of nitrogen on, and that might help to improve the quality of the turf. But indeed, this week has been pretty ideal for the development of that disease. So there's patches of red thread all over the ryegrass in my neighborhood. Even some of the neighbors are asking because depending on the hue of it, it can be kind of striking and dramatic, right? But when we talk about the weeds, I had an email last week. Somebody said, why is common chickweed, I said mouse ear earlier, didn't I? That's a perennial. Why is common chickweed, the winter annual, so pervasive? And I think a lot of it has to do with all of the winter annual weeds. Remember, these germinate in the fall and they kind of sit there vegetatively over winter, and then they get going in the spring, set seed, and then they die sometime in early summer. Climatic conditions have just been so much more hospitable to the growth and development of these weeds, right? Because we have milder winters, and so we've got more ideal conditions for them to survive in. So that's maybe one of the reasons that we see more of these. That and also oxalis. There's actually a couple of different oxalis species in Ohio. We've always had this one, oxalis stricta, which is classified as a winter annual, but it's kind of opportunistic, sort of like Poa annua, that it can germinate basically any time of the year that conditions are, right for it. So, we see a flush of germination in late summer, but we also see some at this time of the year. And then we're also seeing this weed, which is a perennial, tends to have more reddish foliage, but it doesn't have to. Corniculata, Oxalis corniculata is the name of this weed. So this is actually a perennial species. It can, spread, it has runners. But we're seeing both of these in lawns and landscapes right now. And then some other clover species that are blooming right now include black medic. We've always had black medic. This is a summer annual, right? But we're also seeing this one come into bloom, which is bird's foot trefoil. So, now I personally, I think this one's kind of pretty. So it's like, you don't need to get rid of that. But hey, realistically, I know the audience that I'm speaking to. You're not about having weeds in your lawn, right? This is an interesting one because it's used a lot in forage, and they've got data that shows that planting this in your pasture significantly increases the yield, if you want to call it that, of your cattle. And so, this is something that has been planted on purpose for production agriculture, and it's kind of spread into first industrial areas, then roadside right-of-ways. And now we're starting to see it in home lawns. This one's actually a perennial, but it's blooming right now also, along with black medic and some of the other annual clover-like species. Now, as far as how to get rid of these, if you have a herbicide that contains MCPP or fluroxapyr, those tend to be good options. If you work on a golf course, you can also use clopyralid, but remember, clopyralid is not necessarily labeled for use outside of the golf arena. Similarly, haloxyphene, the new broadleaf herbicide that's in Game On, that has good activity on these types of weeds, but also just a golf herbicide, not for residential or landscaping use. So MCPP and fluroxapyr might be the better option, but again, there's a variety of different herbicides that have those two active ingredients. Now, remember I said that this one, bird's foot trefoil, is a perennial, and a lot of the other ones that I mentioned are annuals. Another option to consider, and this is just an option to consider, is that some of those winter annuals in particular are more resistant. I don't know if that's the right way of saying it, but they tend to not die as quickly after we use our traditional herbicides as would something like dandelion and white clover. So if you're having trouble controlling those, here's a picture of an area of turf that I treated with chelated iron. There's a variety of different chelated iron products that are on the market, like Fiesta, Iron X, Batria. If you use this as a spot spray, this is a contact herbicide. It's an organic herbicide. That's the market that it's intended for, but it's a contact herbicide. It will control those annual weeds quite rapidly within a couple of days. And since they're annuals, you don't have to necessarily worry about them coming back from below ground structures. So the use of chelated iron to control things like dandelions and white clover would be considered a temporary measure because the plant would then regenerate from the below ground parts. But you could consider, if you're having trouble with the synthetic herbicides, you could consider the use of chelated iron as a spot spray. And again, you can get control like what I show in this picture within a couple of days. The problem is that I did that a little bit too early. And so you can see that I have all kinds of crabgrass that has decided to populate the area that was those winter annual weeds. So You know, that's one of those be careful what you wish for. I got rid of the broadleaf weeds, and in comes a flush of crabgrass. Crabgrass right now is about 2 to 4 leaf, depending on where it is and where you are in the state of Ohio. So we're in kind of this waiting period where folks don't necessarily try to control with a post-emergence herbicide just yet, because one, it's not necessarily visible, and so people aren't complaining about it. But two, sometimes if you apply that post-emerge right now, what happens is that you kill the existing crabgrass, and then new crabgrass just germinates where that existing crabgrass was. So, but just to say that crabgrass is all about 2 to 4 leaf at this point. Another email or two that I have gotten this week has dealt with the identification of grasses based on seed head morphology, which again, that's a good idea to try to identify grasses based on their seed heads. Sometimes the vegetative structures can confuse us. Here's a good example. This is Kentucky bluegrass on the left, perennial ryegrass on the right. There's all kinds of morphological ways that you can tell the difference between these two, but when they go to seed, it makes it pretty obvious, right? You're not going to mistake these two plants when they're seeding. But one of the worries that I have is folks will find a seed head, take a picture of that, and then take a picture of a broader bladed different species of grass and assume that the seed heads are coming from the weedy grass. So if you're using seed heads for identification, what I'm trying to say is make sure that the seed head is actually connected to the grass that you're trying to identify. So in other words, this is a ryegrass seed head. I'm pretty sure that it's an annual ryegrass seed head because you can see that it's got pretty long awns on it. And then this is another picture that was sent to me. And yes, it's a coarser bladed grass species that does appear to be annual ryegrass that's in this particular turf area. But again, if you're going to use seed heads to identify, you know, perennial ryegrass is in bloom right now too. So you wouldn't want to take a picture of the perennial ryegrass seed head and assume that it's attached to that broader bladed grass that is the one that you're trying to identify, so that you can try to figure out if there's a selective herbicide for its control. Just a finishing comment. We've had a lot of rain this week, and that's led to some disease activity, but this graph I lifted from weather.gov. Want to give credit. It's a wonderful website where you can get not only your forecast, but past weather information. What this is showing is that for the first time in 5 years, we're actually below normal for rain here in the Columbus, Ohio area. We've had 15.5 inches. We should have had about 18 inches. Last year at this time, we had 25 inches by this time. So we're fully 10 inches down from where we were last year. So I'll be interested to see as the summer progresses how this affects, you know, our turf team time updates. We've been far above normal for yearly precipitation every year since 2016. This is the first time that we've actually been below normal. So it's been a while since we've had a good old-fashioned drought. This might be the year that it actually finally happens. I don't know, but this is the first time in many years that we've actually been below normal for yearly precipitation. And with that, I will turn that back over to you.
Absolutely fabulous, sir. A couple of things just to follow up on the weather and temperatures. Down in Worcester, under 1.5 inch cut turf. Soil temperatures currently not the average, but currently are sitting at 71.6 degrees Fahrenheit. While up in Cleveland, at a 2-inch depth under low cut turf, which is somewhere under 0.37 inches, we are at 67.5 degrees. Now, if you remember last week, we were down at the low 60s. So we have started to creep up with those temperatures. And as everyone likes to say, those warm rains that come up out of the south tend to cause an increase in those temperatures too. We do have a moderation in the forecast. Once we get past Monday, most of the state seems to see the nighttime lows drop back into the 50s. That will really put a stop to any of the intense disease activity, but I would expect the dollar spot problems will continue to ramp up. Although looking at the forecast, it seems like we're going to dry out pretty dramatically for most parts of the state. So I would think that the next 10 days are going to be some of the best golfing weather for the early summer that we're going to get, and any other sporting activities that we have going on. So don't be afraid to get out there and enjoy them, because it's never a given that you'll get them for the rest of the summer. Other things to mention: on August 4th, we have the OSU Turfgrass Research Field Day coming up. We're finally getting back to some sense of normalcy, and so keep an eye out for that information. Next week, we have the Northeast Ohio Lawn Care Association, or the Ohio Lawn Care Association, with their Northeast Ohio meeting. That's up in Rootstown. Make sure and keep an eye out for information on that, or get registered as soon as possible. Other than that, folks, we would like to wish you all the best for the upcoming week. And in the words of a great man, keep it simple, stupid, or it's been emotional, your choice. Thank you.